Get ready for a night of timeless masterpieces as the Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra presents Beethoven's Fifth. The evening opens with More Seasons by Michael Abels, followed by Victor Herbert's Cello Concerto No. 2, featuring internationally acclaimed cellist Ahmet Pelin. The concert closes with one of the most iconic pieces ever written, Beethoven's Symphony No. 5. Join the WCO on March 28th at 7:30 p.m. for Beethoven's Fifth. Tickets are available at wcoconcerts.org/Pelin. Today on CityCast Madison. It's the election to watch. The Wisconsin Supreme Court has a seat on the ballot April 1st. The vacancy is left by Justice Ann Walsh Bradley, who is retiring after 3 decades on the court. And whoever fills the seat will hold a 10-year term. And the race between Dane County Judge Susan Crawford and Waukesha County Judge Brad Schimmel has been dubbed the most expensive race of its kind in U.S. history. We sat down with Judge Susan Crawford to ask about her candidacy. We should note we've invited Judge Brad Schimmel on the show for the same opportunity. We've yet to hear back, but that invitation still stands. It's Monday, March 24th. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Judge Crawford, thank you so much for coming on CityCast Madison.
Oh, my pleasure, Bianca. Thanks for having me.
So this race is projected to be the most expensive race of its kind in U.S. history. Why are the stakes so high?
Well, they were high right from the beginning because the Wisconsin Supreme Court takes up really important issues and their decisions affect every Wisconsinite. So all of our fundamental rights and freedoms are on the line, and the future of our state, for our kids and even our grandkids is on the line. And it became even more high stakes when Elon Musk decided to get involved. He has spent now upwards of $11 million trying to get my opponent, Brad Schimmel, elected. And that is just completely unprecedented. It is the highest amount that any individual has ever spent on any race in Wisconsin history. And he's the richest man in the world, so I expect that amount is only going to continue to climb in this last couple of weeks.
Yeah, he continues to be in the headlines, and certainly in this race for sure. So this is a nonpartisan race, but you are described as the liberal candidate, while your opponent, Judge Brad Schimmel, is considered the conservative choice. The results of this election will determine the ideological leaning of the court. So if you win, how might a maintained liberal majority shape the future of Wisconsin?
Well, look, I look at the current majority on the court as being pro-democracy and pro-rule of law. I don't think they are working on advancing any kind of a partisan agenda. And if I'm on the court, I'm not there to be part of some kind of a bloc or, some alliance with other justices. I'm there to be fair and impartial and independent and to make decisions based on what, the way I believe the law should be interpreted and applied to the facts of the case. But it is also true that in Wisconsin, we had a very conservative majority, a right-wing majority for a long time that was really acting as kind of a rubber stamp back when Scott Walker was governor for every decision that came through the court. And pulling up cases in front of the court before the cases really were ready or had gone through the normal court process to rush them to a decision so they could do things like, uphold Act 10 back in 2011. And that is what we don't want to see return to the state of Wisconsin. And my opponent, Brad Schimmel, has made it really clear that he is bringing a partisan agenda to the court. He has literally said that he wants to be on the court to be part of a support network for Donald Trump. So I think voters need to be really concerned when they hear a judicial candidate saying things like that.
Yeah, it feels like the elephant in the room in this race, and I'm not talking about the GOP political symbol, but that the race has just become so politicized. Both of you are regularly asked about recusals from political endorsers. Is it not paradoxical for judges to have to campaign politically for a role to judge impartially?
Well, We do have judicial elections in Wisconsin. That is how our Constitution provides that judges are selected here. And the alternative is to have appointments. And we've seen how that has worked out on the U.S. Supreme Court. Hasn't always worked out really well. We have a U.S. Supreme Court right now that has a very far-right majority and has really lost the confidence of Americans because those justices are out doing things like accepting luxury trips from people who have an interest in cases before the court and flying partisan flags outside their homes and so forth. And we don't want to go there either. So I think that putting the question to voters is the right way to select justices for our Wisconsin Supreme Court. And I have a lot of confidence in the voters of Wisconsin that they're going to be able to see through this and understand what my opponent is trying to do here with trying to politicize the court, and that they'll do the right thing and put me on the Wisconsin Supreme Court.
Yeah, and is it just that there are political issues that are brought to the court? So does that just become an inherent part of the court that y'all have to navigate?
Well, we have a very divided government in Wisconsin. We have a Democratic governor. We have a very Republican majority in both houses of the legislature. And sometimes those disagreements end up in front of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. So those cases end up having a lot of politics behind them. But the Wisconsin Supreme Court is always there to resolve legal questions. So judges should put their personal politics aside and decide cases based on the facts of the case and the law, the way they interpret it. They have to interpret it fairly and impartially and apply it to the case. But just because of the politics in Wisconsin, it's a very purple state, divided government, a lot of hot button issues end up in front of the Wisconsin Supreme Court.
Behold the wonders of science. Y'all, it's that glorious time of year for UW-Madison Science Expeditions, a UW campus-wide science open house. Yup, they're opening the doors to the science labs and research centers to you and your family for free. From April 4th through the 6th, you can adventure around your top-tier public land-grant university and talk with the world-class researchers, enjoy science demos, and get hands-on at interactive exploration stations. The variety of programs is amazing. You can learn about everything from the human lung to the science behind ice cream. You can even visit monkeys in the Primate Center. Again, UW-Madison Science Expeditions events are free and open to everyone. So, see you at the destinations for exploration on campus April 4th through the 6th. Find the full schedule at go.wisc.edu/science expeditions. March is here, and it's time to make a difference. Jersey Mike's Wisconsin stores are celebrating their annual month of giving, benefiting Special Olympics Wisconsin. And don't miss the highlight, Wednesday, March 26th. It's the Day of Giving. On this special day, Jersey Mike's is donating 100% of sales. Yes, you heard that right, 100% of sales, not just profit, to Special Olympics Wisconsin. That's subs, chips, drinks, and even catering. Order in store or through the Jersey Mike's app. And know that 100% of your purchase stays right here in Wisconsin, supporting local athletes. So mark your calendars for this Wednesday, March 26th, and make your meal count. Help us give back to those who inspire us all. There are three major issues that the Supreme Court will likely decide on in the near future: abortion, voter ID law, and labor rights. While you can't weigh in on pending issues before the court, your general stances on those issues are documented.
I have never taken a position on any case that is before the Wisconsin Supreme Court. I've talked about my experience as a lawyer, and I do have experience in standing up for women's reproductive health care access. I represented Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin and their lawyers, or their doctors rather, in court as a lawyer. And I'm proud of the work that I did because I felt that it was a very important case to get resolved. And it was a successful case. But I have not taken a position on the cases currently in front of the Wisconsin Supreme Court on abortion. I do think it's important for the courts to closely scrutinize those questions and any questions where the argument is being made that, some law or regulation of the government is invading our privacy or violating our constitutional rights. It's very important for the Supreme Court to take a close look at those cases and make sure that people's rights are protected under our Constitution and our laws. The same is true of the other issues that you raised. Those are there's a new Act 10 case working its way through the court. I have not taken a position on that case, and I won't, in part because I haven't read the legal documents filed in that case. I don't know what kind of evidence has been presented, and I don't know what the arguments that the attorneys are going to be making in that case. So as a judge, that's what I rely on when I make decisions. I don't make decisions based on what I read in the headlines. My opponent, Brad Schimmel, does that, and he has taken positions on all of those cases, but I don't do that.
And is something that you're also saying is just because you've made a decision in the past doesn't mean that it's going to reflect how you'll decide. You're looking at cases as a case-by-case situation.
Well, what I'm saying is that I made arguments as a lawyer for my clients in the past, and I have not taken personal positions or made decisions as a judge on those issues.
I did want to quickly ask, because obviously we've got these hot button issues. Are there any other cases, in addition to abortion, voter ID law, and labor rights that might be flying under the radar that might be coming before the Supreme Court that you think people should have their, mind to?
Well, the way the Wisconsin Supreme Court works is that attorneys who have handled appeals in the Court of Appeals or have handled cases in the trial courts can present a petition to get a case in front of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And every year, the Wisconsin Supreme Court reviews those petitions and decides which cases to take up. And they make those decisions based on whether a case presents an issue of statewide importance. And I realize that's all very dry and legal sounding, but what it means is that every case that the Supreme Court decides is a significant legal issue. And they can be cases about anything. They can be about voting and election law. They can be criminal cases. They can be cases about environmental regulations. They can be cases about things like abortion rights, you name it. But every case that the Supreme Court takes up is an important case kind of by definition. And it also means that we don't know year to year what cases are going to be in front of the Wisconsin Supreme Court because they just haven't decided yet. They haven't selected those cases.
And the times change in terms of priorities. Before we let you go, because I know you have lots of things to do, why should you, Judge Susan Crawford, be the next Wisconsin State Supreme Court Justice?
Well, I am a common sense judge. I've served on the Dane County Circuit Court for over 6 years now. My approach to decision making is pretty straightforward. I make sure I get the facts right. I think the truth is really important. I apply the law fairly and impartially, and I never lose sight of the fact that the cases I'm deciding are about real people with real problems. So that's where the common sense comes in, making sure I make a decision that really resolves whatever the dispute is in front of me. And that's how I'm going to make decisions on the Wisconsin Supreme Court as well. I'm not going to be there to try to drive any kind of a political agenda or partisan agenda. My opponent has made it really clear that that's what he's going to be there to do. He said he wants to be on the court to be part of Donald Trump's support network. He has said things like he believes that the Wisconsin Supreme Court screwed over Donald Trump in 2020 when it refused to overthrow the election results in Wisconsin by a 4-3 vote. And now he is putting justice up for sale by letting Elon Musk come in and basically try to buy him this election to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. I think voters should be really, really concerned about that and should vote for me to make sure that our Supreme Court is not politicized, but continues to be a court that's making decisions based on the law and based on protecting the rights of Wisconsinites and not somebody like Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to ask one more question because we do have a very important decision before us, or you guys are making very important decisions, and we have an important decision to make at the ballot box. Is there any last points you'd like to make about what voters should know about you in this race or any other considerations moving
Sure.
towards the election?
Yeah, thank you, Bianca, for that. I have worked throughout my whole career to apply my experience as a lawyer and the skills that I've developed over a more than 30-year career to protect Wisconsinites under our laws and Constitution and to protect our communities. And that started out from the time I was a prosecutor at the Wisconsin Department of Justice, taking the toughest felony cases all the way to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Later in my career, representing ordinary Wisconsinites, public school teachers, voters, women and their doctors in really important cases that I took because I wanted to protect the rights of Wisconsinites. And now as a judge, that's the way I decide every case in my courtroom. I make sure everybody gets a fair shake and gets their day in court. And I decide the cases based on what the facts and the law require. So I ask everybody who is, listening today to make sure that they learn about both candidates, and I'm asking them to give them my vote.
And we did ask Brad Schimmel to come on this podcast probably 4 times, so we appreciate you making the time. Judge Crawford, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Bianca. It was a pleasure.
That was Dane County Judge Susan Crawford on her current run for the open seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. As a reminder, early voting has begun, and the election is on April 1st. If you want to get details about how to register to vote, where to vote, or what else is on your ballot, we highly recommend visiting myvote.wi.gov. We'll also toss that link into our show notes. And we recommend checking out some of our other recent election coverage on the pod, including a roundup on statewide races and the proposed constitutional amendment, a city council explainer with survey responses from city council candidates, plus an interview with the 2 Madison School Board candidates in the board's only contested race. That's all for today, here on CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, your host. If you enjoyed the show, why not share this episode with someone who really cares about elections? We'll be back tomorrow morning with more stories from around the city. Until then, go make a plan to vote.